Hey everybody, welcome back to Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. This week, a special episode with our compatriot from NVIDIA, Tom Petersen, aka Tap. Tap from the West Coast. We've got Marco, we've got Paul here as always, but Tom, where does the Tap come from? I figure it's Tom and Petersen, but what's the A in the middle?
I got my nickname when I was in college. When I first started using email, my university used our initials. So it's TAP, which is my initials, and the A is Albert.
Albert. I was thinking like something exotic like Alfonso.
It's after my grandfather, who was named after Albert Einstein.
Wow. That explains. Wait a minute. Now we're on to something. That explains, Tom. I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've read somewhere that you have like 40 patents to your name.
I do. I think I have a few more than 40, but I don't really keep a close count. But it's everything from CPU architecture, GPU stuff. I'm an inventor, so I invent all kinds of different things. Everything from G-Sync and GPU boost kind of things, and most recently I was involved with FastSync. So I just love inventing. It gives you that crystallized moment when you're struggling to kind of make sense of everything, and then all of a sudden it just pops in together. That's like a real jazz for me.
Unbelievable. That is awesome. Clearly, I mean, the show's called 2.5 Geeks. There's 4 of us here today, so that really screws it up. But clearly, you are full geek. You are by no means the half.
I'm full geek. I got to give you that. Right now I'm sitting here minding my own business, but I'm just reviewing computer graphics because a buddy of mine said there's a couple chapters in here I need to brush up on. So
I'm reading there. Yeah, unbelievable, man. I'll be the half geek for sure. Marco's definitely the full geek because he just got through digging in big time with your new GeForce GTX 1060 mainstream GPU. I'm going to stop the chirping. I think I got a little chirping from Outlook on the audio there. Hopefully not. Marco spent some time with the new mainstream GeForce GTX 1060. Pascal Goes Mainstream was the title of his piece. And Marco, what do you think about this new NVIDIA fella that prices in at $249 to $299?
Yeah, I mean it's all right. No, just kidding. Hold on, let me show this thing off. Here it is. This is the GeForce GTX 1060 Founders Edition card. Now it looks like a 1070 and 1080, but if I flip it around this way, you're going to notice a much shorter PCB, and the cooler extends off the back. This is a lower power version. A lower power GPU on this card versus the 1070 and 1080. More specifically, the GP106 is on this card. Now, let me just run through some specs quickly because I'm sure we're going to want to hear what Tap has to say about this guy. So the GTX 1060 is roughly half of a GTX 1080. So you're looking at a total of 1,280 CUDA cores in here with 80 texture units, 48 ROPs. You have a base clock of 1506 megahertz and a boost clock of 1708 megahertz. Now there's 6 gigs of GDDR5 on the card linked to the GPU via a 192-bit interface, and that memory is clocked at an effective 8 gigabits per second. It's 4006 megahertz specifically. Overall, I ran it through a whole bunch of tests. I obviously compared it to the recently released Radeon RX 480. I have GTX 970 numbers, 1070 numbers, Radeon R9 390 numbers, so you can see kind of a wide range of cards in the article. And to say that the GTX 1060 performs well for its price would be an understatement. So you're talking about a sub $300 card that basically outperforms or performs on par with the GTX 980. It beat the RX 480 more often than not, and was really just a hair behind the Radeon R9 Nano in some tests. So a lower power version of Pascal with the same great good looks of the other Founder Edition cards in a really low power 120 watt envelope. A really, really nice card.
Lots of praise there.
So wait, don't get too verklempt, Tom. Actually, you know what? The first question that I know people are going to ask about the card, and kind of the first drawback, why no SLI? Let's hear from NVIDIA. Why no SLI on this guy?
That's a fair question, Marco. You know, the truth is that we look very closely at all of our user data, and we realize that actually the attach rate of SLI in this price segment is incredibly small. So we're liking to focus all of our design energy on areas that get used and that people enjoy. So we're focusing on our higher end parts, 1070, 1080, and it's a similar rationale. You know, if you restrict what you do, you can produce much better results. So that's really it. It's not that it couldn't. Of course, it could. We just didn't see a real market demand for SLI in that segment.
Gotcha.
So keeping it simple, so to speak.
You know, we've learned a lot over the years. Sometimes we've added a whole bunch of stuff just because you can. And every time you add a widget or a capability or a configuration, you grow your configuration of stuff that needs to get tested. And as you know, we're all about making our drivers incredibly robust, available on the day of launch. And to keep that happening, we have to be sensitive to the variability that we guarantee. So by making tough decisions, because honestly, this was not an easy decision. It's actually a pretty, you know, why aren't we doing this? We could do this, and you have to be the guy that says, well, actually, it costs us in other ways, time to market, quality over the years. And so it's this kind of decisions that I think really allows us to do game-ready drivers. We're going to get our game-ready drivers done faster than we otherwise would have.
Could, and maybe this is a loaded question, and I'll just go one step further on this one. I know Marco's got at least one or two more, but is it possible? Could third-party AIBs, add-in board partners, add the capability to their cards, or is that really not an option at this point?
It's not going to work. Certainly, SLI is a complex topic, of course, because DX12 has kind of changed things. So what I'm talking about is what we call implicit SLI, where for DX11 and older architectures, NVIDIA does all the driver work to do AFR across multiple GPUs, and we do most of that transparently to what the game developers do. Now, that is only going to be one way on GTX 1060. There's no multi-GPU support on 1060 for that mode. However, just like every other GPU, on DX12 and going forward, game developers have the option of supporting multi-GPU, and they can do multiple of the same GPUs. They can do multiple different GPUs, and whatever game developers enable, of course, will support the full range of that as a single discrete GPU does in these explicit SLI modes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So less of an issue moving forward with DX12.
Definitely, and again, what we found is that the game developers are the best equipped to build robust systems for multi-GPU. AFR is this technique that's somewhat running out of gas as games do more post-processing, and so we need to have kind of new innovation and new technologies to kind of give the software infrastructure a boost going forward.
Sure. Marco,
so
one
other
questions?
point related to multi-GPU in this card. I'm of the opinion that if it's always better to spring for the higher end single GPU versus two cheaper cards, and it's essentially buying two of these is like buying one 1080, so you're better off buying one 1080. I get that not everybody's going to be cool about the lack of SLI on the card, but it really makes more sense to just go buy a 1080 instead if you're looking at a pair of these. So just one more thing to consider.
Yep.
Well, I totally agree. Of course, I mean the user that's interested in that class of performance, whether you're running 4K or maybe you're running multiple 25 by 14 displays, or you've got that 34-inch. I've got a great 34-inch Predator right here. If you're running those configurations, you're probably going to want a higher performance single GPU just to kind of get the best from your display configuration.
Sure.
Yep.
How popular is this SKU going to be for NVIDIA, do you think, Tom? This obviously is much more mainstream. Is this where you see the meat of the sales for your GPU? For the cuts of your various GPUs?
There's definitely going to be gigantic demand for 1060, and we're going to ramp it as rapidly as production will possibly allow. And there's always been in this segment that budget-conscious enthusiast where you're going to be playing games, you're going to be running at 19 by 10 or 25 by 14, and this part is really just perfect for them. Now, of course, over time we'll have our stack extended downward, but this one is actually one of the biggest volume and one of the best selling parts we're going to make.
Makes sense. Marco, what else you got? Paul, you got questions for Tom on this? Oh, you are muted, I think.
So let me jump in while he's muted for a second, because I still see him muted. I forgot to mention when I started that I'm monitoring comments on the site and on the YouTube channel. We have a whole bunch of viewers on YouTube, so if you have questions while we still have time and you want to ask something, go ahead and post. I will try to ask it if I see it in time. One other thing, just to get Tom's input here, because this is kind of a debate that rages constantly. If you look at our numbers, I only tested a handful of DX12 titles, but you see the GTX 1060 has kind of a larger lead in DX11 titles versus the RX 480, and that lead either dwindles or goes away in some DX12 titles. Thoughts on like why the uplift isn't quite as high there? What's NVIDIA's thoughts there?
Well, our take is that it's still very early days on DX12, and as you look at what happened with DX9, DX10, and DX11, over time, our driver support gets better and games get better of working with all the different architectures. So we fully expect that just like we kind of crushed it on DX11 and DX10 and DX9, our support for DX12 is going to continue to get better, and game developers are going to get better at developing robust architectures in DX12. So I would say early days on DX12, but we're not a slouch on DX12. We're doing very well. But I would say that going forward, you're going to see changes both on the GPU side, on the driver side, and also on game side that I expect will see better scaling on DX12. It's very early days.
Gotcha. Yeah. And just for my own edification, I had inquired with some of your partners over there at NVIDIA to make sure this was the full configuration of GP106 on the card. But I noticed on the PCB there's still 2 pads for 2 additional memory chips. What's the reason behind that?
Well, when we're building a card, there's always conversations about how much memory, what style memory. So the cards are often built with a certain amount of configurability, and our reference design obviously could work for multiple different memory configurations, even if the GPU at the end of the day doesn't support it. So that's the way I would look at it. Cards are sort of a superset of potential function, and they don't always represent what we eventually bring to market.
Gotcha.
Interesting. So theoretically, you've got what looks like at least a couple of sites for additional GDDR5 BGAs. Theoretically, we could be looking at an 8 gig card. Is that?
I don't want to make any comments about what may or may not be in the future. It's hard to predict. I mean, a lot of the times you'll see boards that are built with an 8-pin that actually end up shipping with a 6-pin, and vice versa. I mean, it's all, think about the board as moving forward with a set of expectations that by the time it all comes together with chips and you do all your testing and all your performance stuff, you kind of tweak things towards the end. By the time you get to the point where you know everything, kind of the board is what it is. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg. So you tend to make the board conservative so that you know that you can cover all cases no matter what you see when the chip comes back and you start testing.
I think it makes sense. Certainly, the 6 gig configuration for this GPU, this class of GPU, you're talking 2560 by 1440, 60 frames per second kind of performance, and pretty much any game title, max image quality. You get up towards 4K, and you drop below the 40 frames per second range, so it's still not unplayable. Maybe that's helped a little bit with an 8 gig buffer instead of a 6 gig buffer, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect to see a lot of difference there today on today's games because 6 gig is a giant amount of frame buffer relative to today's games, and it's going to be some time, and I would expect quite some time before you look back and say 6 gig is small.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So if you look through some of the numbers, I believe it's in Hitman and maybe ASUS, you can actually see where the 4 gig and 8 gig Radeon RX 480, where the 4 gig card has much lower minimum frame rates because of that frame buffer as it's getting full. So yeah, it's time for the 6 and 8 to sort of be the norm even for mainstream gamers. And just a quick little comment I'm going to mention from YouTube, because I already know Tom's answer, but Chris asks, should I buy it? I'm going to tell Chris to read the review and make up your own mind, but it's a decent card for the money, yeah. And while I'm chatting with Tap, just to get some insight on what goes on at NVIDIA when you're designing products like this and what's happening, I know you guys have the business side to deal with, but you're also a bunch of geeks and you love the tech. Do you guys like get nuts when you're designing like the big high-end monster Pascal? Or are you more excited for something like the 1060?
So I'm going to speak for me personally because I don't want to speak for all of the geeks at NVIDIA, but I get excited about the big metal. The stuff that you can do things that you've never been able to do before, like say 4K surround running at crazy frame rates with G-Sync, and you're looking at that thing and you're going, what? It's just so good that you haven't seen it that good before. And that's why I come into work every day and I get jazzed, is because for some reason I'm just like, visuals get me tickled. And and you can look at things like G-Sync on and G-Sync off and you go, wow, that is really, it's great. And like when we have our big metal Pascal, you can tell all of our team that's talking are just super excited, and they love working on this technology because most of us are gamers. And when you get to work on a craft that you actually love, you can't get a better job. I think it's like those gearheads that actually get to work in a car company, and I mean they're like just wallowing in it, right? We're kind of the same way.
So you guys, how often do you guys hang out after work and just have this massive freaking frag land fest with your stuff?
It happens. We've got a gamer room set up at NVIDIA, but honestly, all of us are we're all running around. So most of our gaming is happening at night. For me, I get hooked on games right now, and it becomes a little obsessive. I've got a real problem right now with a game that came out recently called Stellaris, I guess. And if you haven't played that game, here's a plug for those guys. It's crazy. It's a gigantic solar system builder, and I'm also playing, I guess it's called Overwatch, where I've got some buddies at Logitech now that are effectively kicking my butt all the time. But he's still a good guy. I love him, and I can't help it.
Andrew and you, Jesh?
And his daughters. His daughters are amazingly good.
Nice.
So Olivia is just an amazing Overwatch player.
It's funny. We get access to a lot of hardware here as well, as you know, Tom, and it's we don't get enough time to game. It's unfortunate because we're so busy benchmarking the stuff and testing this stuff, but as you get access to it, you would think by osmosis we would be naturally like totally lethal gamers. No, my 18-year-old son can mop the floor with me.
Oh yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I get toys. Okay, so I'm going to show you a toy here.
Awesome
toys. So I've got my little. This is my favorite display right now. It's a G-Sync 34 by 14. That's my primary gaming monitor right there.
What is it? Is that the Acer Predator?
Yeah, it's the Predator. I got an early version, and it rocks. Little G-Sync plug right there, G-Sync baby. Yeah.
Tom, I'm looking at the exact same monitor right now.
Are you really?
Yeah, I love it.
It is great. It is great. And I've also got this stuff over here. See that? The what is it called? HOTS, hand on throttle and stick.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That thing is great. The for playing like Elite Dangerous. So.
Are you a flight sim buff at all?
I got hooked on Elite Dangerous, and that thing is just a gigantic explorer kind of game. So you can kind of just late at night, you're just sort of tooling around. It's low impact, a total fun.
Awesome. What is your favorite? Let's see. What is your favorite? I don't know. Have you seen an impressive, I guess, AIB design that you would say? It's just your favorite approach to cooling your product. I don't know if you want to pick favorites there. It might be a tough question, so maybe you have to go with 2 or 3.
I have a couple ways to look at it. First of all, there's kind of a black and white difference between people that want to exhaust the air out of the chassis, which is a favorite approach for system builders, honestly, because they like to keep it cool inside the chassis. It's a little more stable. But then there's the guys that want it to be completely quiet, and they don't mind that the air is staying inside the chassis. So I think those are kind of 2 different fundamental beliefs in cooling design. We, of course, are building the high end. We're willing to spend a little bit more money to get the cooler to exhaust all of the heat out of the chassis. But some people don't care about that. And I think EVGA's done some great small form factors. I mentioned that one card that's I guess it's sort of using our same reference design board, but it's got a small cooler on it. I think that's pretty cool for ITX guys and folks that are going to be doing a living room PC. So, but I don't want to just pick one. ASUS has got some beautiful boards. Gigabyte's got beautiful boards. Pally, everybody. And And it's hard to pick because they're all so wonderful.
Tom, what are you running in your rig right now?
I have a 1080. I have the reference design 1080, of course.
So just a single card?
Right now I have a single card because for me a single 1080 for my 3414 is all I need. But I do occasionally throw a second card in there because I want to do some of that HP bridge testing. So I don't know, Marco, if you've tried out the HP bridge, but it is a pretty significant advancement for our multi-GPU at the high end, and it makes a huge difference if you have high-res monitors. So every once in a while I throw that in there and check it out.
Now, it's really with multiple high-res monitors you see the most difference, though, correct?
It varies. I say anything over 25 by 14 at 120 hertz single, or if you're doing any surround configuration, of course 4K above 60 and anything 5K. So it does matter with single monitor, but it has to be higher refresh, higher, kind of higher pixel rate.
Gotcha. Any super secret stuff on those shelves back there that we can zoom in on and check out? Or no?
I don't know what I got back there. No, you know what? That is. I don't keep crud, right? So this is what you see behind me is basically all of my possessions in the world. I literally, if you walk around my house, you'll see nothing. But what I have back there is a couple diplomas. I got a guitar because I saw Dave's guitar and a few. Oh, but you know what? I do have. Let me show you this.
Here it is.
Let's get something good.
This I've kept for years. My very first high-tech job. Let me show you that one. You guys see that?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Motorola PowerPC, man.
That's right. That was my very first architecture job. I was involved with the definition and kind of building. I was a micro-architect on the 620. And that was my very first high-tech job. I worked in Austin for about 10 years, and then I came out to California.
Wow. Is that an actual die or just a picture?
No, it's a die. That's
awesome.
Silicon cool. of a 601, or is that a 620? That's a 620.
Were you building them for Macs back in the day?
I was. I spent a lot of time out. I have a story about the one time I got to meet Steve Jobs, and it was crazy because he basically went around the room and kicked everybody out, and including me. So I'd come all the way from Austin to talk about our new chips, and I didn't get to stay in the meeting, but my boss did. So yeah, pretty cool.
Nice.
Awesome. Nice, and I remember there was a moment right around the Pentium bug. I was working on a 620, but 601 had come out at that time, and there was this moment of hope where you're like, oh my God, Intel has screwed up so bad. We're going to take over the PC market. We're going to win. And it completely did not happen. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I remember the cutover. I was in the semiconductor industry myself back in those days, and I remember the cutover at Apple, and I remember the cutover at EMC. Actually, I was calling on the great storage giant, now part of Dell, bought by Dell. EMC was all PowerPC architecture as well, and then one day went what they call common platform on x86, and I was like, wow, there goes Motorola Semiconductor.
Yeah. Whoops.
But well, these are some good things though. That's impressive, Tom. I had no idea you were into very large scale semiconductor design, and you were that kind of. I mean, I knew you were smart, but that's really.
Oh no, I'm a real hardcore geek. Yeah. I've you know what? I got a couple diplomas back there too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tom, when, I guess last sort of softball question, when can we expect some 1060s on the shelf in volume? We were looking for them today on places like Amazon and whatnot. Volume soon?
Oh yeah, I mean we've shipped a bunch of GPUs, and obviously those are going to work their way through the channel. We were excited to see multiple different AICs on shelf today, and they're going to continue to keep pushing because obviously for the foreseeable future, demand is going to far exceed supply as these guys kind of ramp up. So I expect them to come and go, but it's not because supply is not there. It's the supply is definitely there. We're definitely shipping volume. It's going to be just catching up with everybody's excited.
Demand is a good thing. How's process going at the fab line with TSMC? I know that's something you got to be careful of. I can't say too much, but that you've got some bleeding edge, especially for GPUs. I mean, certainly the mainstream processor guys are at that process geometry, but in GPUs that's seriously bleeding edge. how's that coming along?
You know, we're seeing very good supply on both 1080, 1070, and now 1060, and you know, I expect that that availability will continue to ramp. So no issues that I'm aware of with the suppliers.
Cool.
And I would think you guys are really happy with where power and clocks are too. It just, you seem to have just, power is really nice on the 1060. I mean, on all of the Pascal cards, and you know, hitting clocks. I think I just missed 2.1 gigahertz on my overclock.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, we are absolutely excited about it because our engineering team has worked on this architecture and worked on the timing, kind of like polishing it, right? They're just sort of sitting there working and working and working. When it comes back and it exceeds your wildest dreams in terms of performance, you're like, oh, guys, you're rock stars. You know,
you killed it.
You killed it. Good job.
See, now that, you know, yeah, we're actually looking at Marco's overclocking chart right now. So you're looking at Thief 2560 by 1440, a very high image quality. Essentially, another 10% of free performance overclocked. Marco, fully stable at that speed?
That's full stable, no weirdness at all. I could have definitely gone higher if I wanted to fight with it and play and push it further, but that was like everything just working, super easy, simple stuff. So yeah, that's yes.
Another 10%.
Yeah, the thing about when we're normally doing our designs is we're not pushing it right to the very edge where we're gonna push the power up, we're gonna push the clocks up just to get where what we think our base is. What we found is that when we under-promise in the sense of our boost clock is let's call it conservative, then when the part is not always but often running higher than that, people love it. And then when they can push the clock higher with overclocking, they're like, this is great, right? Now, if you think about the alternative, we could push everything up right to the edge and leave no overclocking margin, and the clocks would then be capping down in situations that get tough, and people are like, oh, you know, I thought you said it was going to be a 1.5 gigahertz thing, but it's really a 1.3 gigahertz thing. Now the truth is, at the end of the day, the clock is not what matters, it's the delivered performance. So that becomes positioning. You know, you want to set the expectation of users in line with what your hardware can do, and we try to do that every time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes sense for manufacturing too, in terms of yield, all that good stuff. If you're pushing the envelope too hard, you're going to reach a point of diminishing returns. If the tools are out there for the user to build that in or dial that in themselves, and certainly AIBs with more exotic cooling or what have you, there you go.
Yeah, it's very important to have a robust ecosystem, and part of that ecosystem is factory overclocks. So you want to kind of build all of that margin into your base product plan. Cool.
Very cool. Any other thing to share for us, Tom? Any words of wisdom from the land of NVIDIA before we let you off the hook?
I would say, it's never been a better time to upgrade.
You know what? It's so funny that you say that. I'm so sorry to jump in right here as we're about to say goodbye. I wanted to close my article with kind of thoughts in line with that. You could build such a killer PC for not a ton of money right now. There really is no better time to get into PC gaming right now. And it's not just because of the 1060. There's tons of great parts, that are affordable now. And the experience, if you have a PC that's a couple of years old and you haven't experienced something with a low-power, fast GPU like this, with an SSD, with plenty of memory and Windows 10, you are completely missing out. Completely missing out.
Totally agree.
I agree, Marco. Totally.
Of course, that's our job. We're purveyors of addictive stuff like this. Hot hardware, as they say.
You guys are doing a great job. I love to see the guitar back there. Keep it up. Are you an active guitarist right now? Are you
Tom, back in the day, I do. I pick it up. I keep it in my office because, especially when I need to just chill for a couple of minutes, I'll pick it up and plunk around. Back in the day in college, I played at a couple of party bands, stuff like that.
I can see that.
Serious. But anything that would bring the girls back in the day was really more the thing.
You got to do what you got to do.
But now it's back there looking good. I wish I had more time to play it. My daughter plays, and that was another reason to pick it back up too. So
nice.
How about yourself? Is that
no? I'm horrible. I used to actually be okay. That's a classical guitar, and it's actually one of those things that's stupid hard for me to play because I have no natural talent for most things, including guitar. And so for me, it's just a study in the mental discipline to try to play the thing. But I suck. It's terrible. Yeah.
No natural talent except for 40 patents and all that other kind of amazing stuff. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No, you might want to consider getting an electric, because I'll tell you what, that when you talk about being forgiving, that Fender Strat behind me, electrics are just set up differently, lower action on the fretboard in general, and they especially when you turn up the distortion, you totally can mask your mistakes. It's awesome.
Nice.
That sounds like an optimization. Man. Turn up the distortion.
It's it. The distortion filter. Everybody needs one. All right. Well, Tom, thanks for joining us, my friend. It was good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys, and have a great show. Really appreciate the positive words of affirmation. I'm feeling pretty good right now, so I'm going to head into work and try to solve the next problems.
Go make some more GPUs. Thanks, bud.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Tom.
See you guys. Bye, guys.
Take care. TAP, or Tom Petersen from NVIDIA, the Director of Technical Marketing from NVIDIA, joining us today talking GeForce GTX 1060. Good guy, huh? A lot of fun with Tom there.
Tom's very cool.
He's always a bubbly, effervescent sort of personality.
I wouldn't know. I'm assuming you guys can hear me now?
Yes.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great to have you back.
I wouldn't know. The thing that happened was there was a rare Pokemon outside, and I had to go catch it,
Oh, God.
No, my audio just took a dump, and of course it has to do it on the day that we have a high-profile guest on the show. But
that is absolutely the case. Actually, I'll tell you a secret. What happened 15 minutes before Tom showed up on the cast is my webcam wasn't working in Hangouts for some reason. Just decided to bail on me, and so I'm like panicking. I'm like, Tom's going to be waiting any minute, and my webcam is coughing at me. It's Murphy's Law.
One more technical glitch too. I was monitoring comments on YouTube, and I'm watching the comment count go up and down as I refresh. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, it had comments, and the comments were gone, so I stopped looking.
It's interesting. YouTube's been having a lot of problem with that lately. I think they have a glitch. I see comments come in. I get notifications from email, and on a lot of our comments for our videos, and it comes in my email. I go to look at the actual video page. It's not there. I think it's a YouTube glitch right now. So
we'll just blame Google for everything that goes wrong today.
That's it. It's all your fault, Google. You big 800-pound gorilla. Hey, so. Let's move on real quick. I'll keep the beat going with NVIDIA just briefly and talk about something that our buddy Brandon Hill did for us, a rare review actually, or sort of a how-to overview kind of thing for the NVIDIA Shield. Brandon's our managing editor for the news channel at HotHardware.com, but he is also a Plex Media Server buff, and Plex Media Server, if you're not familiar with it, is some pretty fantastic software that allows you to install it on any machine in your home. There's lots of different platforms it certainly supports, whether it be Windows PC, Android, iOS, all the good stuff, and tap into some network-attached storage you may have in your home or in your office and basically access it anywhere. And it's got a very good user interface. And it makes things super easy to access your media from anywhere in the world and stream and all that good stuff. And he actually checked out NVIDIA's Shield Pro with Plex Media Server streaming prowess. That was the headline of our piece. And the NVIDIA Shield Pro, I'm going to pick it up. It's over here. Is this little guy, and this has got an NVIDIA. Let's just try and get that in the camera without having the focus wig out. It is a super thin and light little set-top box console, if you will. If you're not familiar, NVIDIA Tegra X1 SoC, system on a chip under the hood, very low power, very quiet, and is now supports Plex Media Server. So it's Android TV based OS, and he had a 500 gig enabled Shield Pro with Plex Media Server. And if you haven't checked this out, now Brandon is an absolute hardcore Plex user. He's a super streamer guy, cord cutter, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna share this out. Present to everybody. There we go. And he actually was able to set up as a snap. It's all right there. It's an app in Google Play, and he already had a Plex account. He had an 802.11n connection, and certainly all the goodness there of Android TV and NVIDIA's Shield platform from a UI standpoint, but he's able to actually stream. He's got a setup right here of 4 devices streaming 1080p simultaneously, and Shield isn't breaking a sweat. And then he goes on actually to add a 5th device, and then he even did a couple of tests with encoding, with transcoding on the Shield. Marco, I think you've done this too. I think it may on the encoding side, transcoding it may sort of cap out at like 3 streams. Is that fair? 3 1080p streams?
I don't remember the number, but it puts a lot more load than simply playback. Yes.
But you're talking, okay, let's just say you had this in the home or in the office, and you had an entire family, 4 or 5 people, maybe 6 people, all wanting to watch something different off your NAS, and your network certainly supports the bandwidth. This little box, the Shield, NVIDIA Shield, can handle it, and now is Plex Media Server enabled. So check out that. It's a quick little short 2-pager.
Over and above what you just mentioned, though, that Shield Pro also has its own storage. So if you have stuff stored on there, it can be streamed not just from a NAS. And if with Plex, you don't have to be just on your network. You could be out and about on your cell phone, logged into your Plex account on your mobile device, and stream your stuff from home. So now, the Shield always had the Plex playback app. Now it can act as the server. So if you don't have a dedicated machine to act as a Plex server, now the Shield can do that. It's really cool functionality.
Good point. So this little device, 500 gigs in the Pro version of this little device, it can actually be your NAS for media as well, at least 500 gigs worth. And it's got it's expandable too. You've got some USB 3 capabilities, so you could expand off that as well. Interesting stuff. How does that work? I always wondered. They must obviously tunnel through Plex to get access to your media anywhere. If you're off on your cell phone and you're not in your premises, right, on your own network.
Yeah, it's basically just forwarding assuming you have a dynamic IP on your home ISP, just basically funneling your connection to your mobile device.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Good stuff. Let's move on. We'll move on to the mobile side a little bit more, and let's have Paul talk about one of his recent devices that he checked out, the ASUS ROG Strix gaming notebook. I'm going to try and pull that up for you, Paul. This is a pretty badass machine, a Strix GL502 VT-GS74. That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
What'd you think?
It's a nice machine. They did something interesting. Things were kind of getting a little confusing over at ASUS as far as their different sub-brands go, because you have ROG, which is the Republic of Gamers. It's for the hardcore gamers, and then you have the Strix branding, which is also a gaming entity over at ASUS. And they've combined the two together and started releasing products that are ROG and Strix. And this was the first laptop to come out of that. It's a 15.6 inch. It's based on Skylake. When we go down the spec sheet here, it has the Intel Core i7 6700 HQ, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 970M GPU with 6 GB of GDDR5 memory, 16 GB of DDR4 RAM, 128 GB M.2 SATA drive, and then the rest is like Wi-Fi, webcam, Windows, and all that good stuff. So it's a well-equipped machine, and for a gaming laptop, what they did with this one is it's thinner and lighter than what you'd expect from a typical desktop replacement. This one wouldn't fall in the desktop replacement category. It's a few years ago, I think it would have fell into that category, but it's thin and light. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's in ultrabook territory, but it's under 5 pounds, which for a gaming laptop is not that bad, and under an inch thick. One of the highlights I like about this laptop is that if you buy it from an authorized retailer, and ASUS has a list of these, you get included with your 1-year warranty accidental damage protection, which is kind of a rare add-on to come stock with the warranty. So you don't have to shell out. I know it's third-party services that offer that at a cost, but this one's included. So if you spill something on your laptop or your kids knock it off the table and something breaks, it's covered, that's really cool.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Performance-wise, it did really well. It stacked up nice. It stacked up right where you'd expect it to against other systems that are similarly configured. There's plenty of horsepower in the 970M to game at full HD, 1920 by 1080. For $100 more, if you want the added headroom, at the time of the review at least, it was $100 more to step up to a 980M. I don't remember if there were some other upgrades along with that, but for the GPU alone, I think it'd be worth it. This laptop, when I reviewed it, was buck shy of $1,600, $1,599.
So 970M, is that what you said? Yeah.
970M, and it didn't struggle in any of our tests. It did fine as far as gaming. There's plenty of horsepower there to game it at its native res, which like I said, is full HD. They do have a 4K panel option that they said was coming soon. I haven't checked to see if it's available yet. If you're gonna spring for that, I'd definitely say you want something with a beefier GPU. But for this model, it's just fine. What I didn't like about it was the construction felt kind of cheap for a $1,600 laptop. I didn't want to go so far as to say it's chintzy, but it definitely didn't feel like a premium laptop. There's a lot of plastic with some give in it that just wasn't what you expect out of something that has the ROG tag on it, because we've reviewed a ton of laptops from Republic of Gamers, and they're all high-end, nice-looking systems. And this one is nice-looking as well, until you start to touch it and feel it, and then you find out that brushed aluminum look is actually plastic, and it's kind of thin plastic.
So right there on the palm rest, that's not brushed aluminum on the palm rest?
That's not brushed aluminum. That's plastic, and it has a little give in it. So it's definitely not a premium built as far as construction goes, but it does look nice. I mean, if someone's walking by or looking at pictures or whatever, they're not going to be able to tell the difference. But you will when you hold.
Yeah. Looking at it now, I'm actually looking at the guts of it here. I just put up a picture on that. You can actually see that this is the occasion where that sub 5-pound machine is actually serviceable. The good news is you've got access to, obviously here, your M2 SSD stick right there, right, and then the RAM as well. So you can upgrade and expand on both of those. It looks like maybe even swap the battery out if it dies. Yeah.
Yes, it's not like a typical laptop where you can take the battery off the back and swap it, so it's not replaceable that way. But you can buy a spare battery if over the next year or two that starts to lose its juice. You can buy another battery and swap it out pretty easily. It's accessible without any adhesive or any of that good stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, for what was it, MSRP of $15.99 with 16 gig of RAM, 128 gig M2 solid state drive, and a 6 gig GeForce GTX 970M. Good component configuration for the money. Just wish it was a little bit better in terms of build quality. What about the panel? How is the display? That 1080p display? ASUS tends to put pretty good stuff in their panel wise.
The display was really good. Had good viewing angles. The colors were nice and crisp. The screen was bright. I think we had a Lenovo in that we had reviewed a couple of weeks back. One of their lower end systems where the panel was just kind of cruddy compared to this, where it just didn't get real bright. And then you have a system like this, and it cranks it up. It's a big difference.
It's interesting you bring that up, and we see a lot of notebooks here. We've been doing a lot of them these days, whether it be gaming configured notebooks or design notebooks like this from ASUS, or certainly ultrabooks and thin and lights. But manufacturers tend to dial things in, I think, in some cases to address battery life with respect to the panel. And one of the things we've seen with Lenovo is really nice designs, really well built in terms of the keyboard. Probably one of the best keyboards in the business, certainly in the ThinkPad line for notebooks and laptops. Displays, they always tend to, at least it seems this way, go towards they'll have nice IPS displays, good quality displays, but they tend to be a little less on the brightness output.
And it definitely Depends on
Go
the
ahead.
model too, because they have some higher end models where
Yeah.
the brightness is fine, but by and large, yeah, you're right. A lot of their, especially the mid range and the lower cost stuff, the panels don't get all that bright.
Yeah, I'm probably generalizing. You're right. I think it's more mid-range, versus their high-end stuff. But yeah, ASUS tends to go on the higher end for displays, and that's certainly a nice-looking machine. I like the design and the color coding too. It's just too bad. A little brushed aluminum on that wrist rest area, real brushed aluminum would probably go a long way, I guess, huh?
That, or even if you went with something like carbon fiber, or anything just better than the thin plastic that they used, would have, I think, upped the value proposition on this, because it's a $1,600 laptop, and you expect a little more premium feel than what you get. But otherwise, it's a great system. I mean, if you're just looking to game, and it's hardware rules all, then this is a fine option.
I'm gonna slide out of the frame real quick and grab something that's probably the opposite end of the spectrum relative to this machine, and that's the HP Spectre. Spectre. Hang on. I always screw up that name. Marco flagged me for it. I say Spectre like a Bostonian, I think, but it's Spectre, spelled S-P-E-C-T-R-E. And this is actually, let me see if I can get her to wake up here if she's got a charge on her, but this is actually a beautiful machine. Super thin and light. Let me get it up to the camera. Come on, so you can see how thin that is. Ooh. And hold it still here for you. It's kind of tough, but as you can see, the hinge is very unique as well. It's got this piston hinge, they call it, and really nice. It actually suspends the display slightly up off the edge of the laptop, and unfortunately, it does not have a charge in it, so forgive me there. But really nice design. Carbon fiber and brushed aluminum, and a really nice keyboard with good key travel, significantly better key travel than other thin and light machines like MacBook Airs that are this super thin. It is the world's, HP claims, the world's thinnest laptop. This is a 13-inch HP Spectre, and I took a look at it. It is a beautiful machine, probably one of the nicest looking laptops I've ever held. And the reason why I say it's sort of the other end of the spectrum is that here you're talking about a machine that is sub 3 pounds, 2.45 pounds, so they can't jam a lot of heavy-duty processing power in there. However, they were able to squeeze a Core i7-6500U dual-core 2.5 gigahertz base, 3.1 gigahertz max boost into this machine, as well as a 256 gig M2 NVMe SSD and 8 gig of DDR3 RAM, 1600 DDR3 memory. So you combine that, and what you're talking about is a pretty stout config for again, 2.45 pound machines, less than 2.5 pound machine. Still trying to get that into the frame without screwing it up too much, but that thing is wafer thin, and you're probably wondering, how the heck does it stay cool? Well, it's actually got a pretty good system, what they call hyperbaric cooling. I'm going to try and share this out too. Let me get to the page first, actually, and show you the design. It's actually pretty impressive. Here we go. Right. Present to everybody. There we go. So here's that hinge I was talking about. Again, really beautiful design, super good looks, super thin and light. There's the hinge itself, the internals. But you can see this fan right here as part of the cooling system actually creates pressure inside the chassis and forces hot air out. There's a method in which they've channeled. You can see there. It might be hard to see in the frame, but you can see that there's a little bit of foam around the edge of the fan, so it absolutely cuts off and seals the fan so that it's pumping air and pressurized from inside the chassis out. And let me see if I can get one more shot to show you. No, it's not going to be in that, but you can see it on the bottom side of the notebook. There's this little vent right here up in the top edge of this picture right here. It does a really good job of keeping the system cool with that kind of horsepower in the CPU. and that kind of clock speed. Again, 3.1 gigahertz for the Core i7-6500U processor that's on board. And it actually, again, with that NVMe SSD, making things snappy on the I/O side, it actually put up some of the best scores we've ever seen from ultrabooks, machines in this weight class. The flip side was it did get a little loud from time to time. Those fans do spin up. They do have to create that pressure, push that warm air out. And so it gets a little bit louder than the average thin and light, but not annoyingly so, not so much that it was a deal breaker. It also spun up sort of randomly. In other words, it didn't always have to be under heavy load. We would hear it just kick in sitting idle for whatever reason, but not to the point where you're, get this thing out of my office kind of thing. It's not like that. But a beautiful looking machine. Marco, I know you've had eyes on it. What do you think about the HP Spectre?
I think it's beautiful. That's exactly the kind of machine that I would love to carry around if it had touch. That's the only thing missing, in my opinion, is touch on that thing. It's so beautiful. It's so thin. It's got relatively high-end specs considering its size. That's a really... I think that's the thinnest notebook available, if I'm remembering correctly, 10.4 millimeters at its thinnest or whatever.
Yeah, it's
so to get Core i7 and half decent battery life, and that's awesome. It's just missing touch, and if the battery life was a little better and had touch, I'd just give them my credit card.
Yeah. It's funny. 1080p full HD display. So for me, my ideal notebook would be a 2560 by 1440 display, no touch. I'm not, some folks want touch. I don't find myself using it all that much. It's handy once in a blue moon when I just can't get to the keyboard and I want to just poke at something, but not often. I'd like a little bit more res, but at 13.3, 1080p is fine. That's barely a gripe at all. Battery life, that's where they did have to sacrifice. You make a good point there. It's a 38 watt-hour battery on board this puppy, which, again, you would think wouldn't be enough, but it actually held up respectably in our video loop test, 1080p video loop test, just shy of, what was it? It was a little over 4.5 hours, I think. But it was middle-of-the-pack performance. Where it trailed was in our Battery Eater Pro test, where we put a ton of load on the machine, crank up the processor, crank up the drive access, and basically memory consumption, and try and burn the battery up as quick as we can. Here, because the fans had to spin up more, I believe, it actually was near the bottom of the pack. So idle or doing basic stuff like video, surfing the web, browsing the web, doing email, this machine's going to sort of hang in the middle of the pack. It's not going to be a superstar in terms of battery life, but it's not going to be a dud either. If you're crunching on it a little bit more, especially if you're doing like some video work, and the machine's totally capable of that, surprisingly at sub 2.5 pounds, no problem with a Core i7-6500U. But you're gonna burn that battery up pretty quick. So those are the drawbacks. But yeah, actually, let me share that out. Share this out. This is the shot I was looking for. The underneath of the machine, and you can see there's the actual vent here in the back edge. The other thing this thing's got is, you can see in the back edge here. I could probably give you a better shot, but there's also 3 USB-C ports, 2 with Thunderbolt 3 capability. So, real impressive, well-equipped machine. HP gives you a bunch of dongles to go with it to adapt to whether you want gigabit Ethernet, wired Ethernet, USB 3 connectivity, and I think an HDMI dongle as well. So, again, if you haven't made that USB-C jump yet, there's a little bit of a conversion to get to the I/O you want, but a lot more than the MacBook with 1 USB-C port. So, a good machine. Paul, what do you think? Is this your kind of baby, or do you need something with a little bit more oomph and muscle?
I like the gaming laptops, but as far as the general purpose machines, this is probably one of the sexiest we've seen. I think the ZenBooks come close, but I think this looks a little better, actually, to me anyway.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job hiding the vents too when you have it flip upright.
Yeah.
I was looking at your other shot, and you can't see the vents in the back until you flip it over.
Yeah, no, it's really, really well designed. Like somebody, with serious industrial design chops, mechanical design chops, looked at how to build a super nice looking machine, and I'll share this out one more time, and it's just it's just a head turner. It just really is. Looks great. The color combination is great. You've got that sort of flat black. Carbon fiber look on the lid, and there is machined aluminum in the wrist rest area, and the gold is almost a copper color. Now that's machined aluminum. That gold slug back here along the back edge, but it's kind of a copper color. It's really not a bright, flashy gold. It's just really, really well done. And yeah, kudos to HP. The only thing they need, I want it in this machine, HP, if you're paying attention right now, OLED. Give us an OLED display. How sweet would that be with this machine with an OLED display, right?
Yeah, I mean, that could boost the battery life right there, too,
Yeah, OLED tends to be a little bit more power efficient. That about wraps it up. Marco, do you have anything in the lab that's interesting these days that you'd like to tease before we let the viewers go? Because we're just about out of time.
I do. I mean, I've had a couple of 1080s in-house that I keep having to juggle because of other GPU launches, so that's hopefully going to happen in the next few days. I have Intel's brand new Core M-based compute stick, which I'm excited to test because the Atom-based compute sticks I thought were awesome, but now you're talking about one with kind of the performance of a mainstream notebook instead of an Atom processor. So that could be really interesting, especially for home theater applications. You saw on Facebook that I'm in the middle of a home theater upgrade that I think is going to turn into an article. We'll see about that. I have to find the time. And yeah, other than that, let me look around for a second. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting, but that's about it for now.
I've got a bunch of stuff coming too. I'll talk about that real quick. But Paul, what do you got in the till? What can we expect from you shortly?
I have a gaming system on tap, and I also have a cable modem from Linksys that just arrived. They're getting into the cable modem business with some high-end options. So if you want to get away from paying a lease on your cable modem every month, there's some available options out there. We'll look and see how that performs here in the coming weeks.
Little DOCSIS 3 or is it DOCSIS 3.1?
I believe it's 3. It just arrived, so I haven't even had a chance to unbox it yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's any 3.1 on the market right now. That's probably way ahead of its time if it was. Interesting. Okay, cool. What's the system you've got? Do you have What do you have
the gaming system from Dell.
So, are you not allowed to talk about that?
Oh, I am.
Okay.
I haven't benchmarked it or anything yet, so there's not much to tell just yet. But it'll be up. It'll be up soon. Dave cracks that whip, so.
I'm a slave driver. Oh yeah. So actually, I'm going to show real quick what I'm looking at right now, and actually, I'm going to flip it around. Maybe it's a little bit better this way. This is something super thin from Motorola. This is the Moto Z. And what I'm more excited about, honestly, this is a really nice Android phone, nice AMOLED display, blowing out the webcam right now. Sorry about that. Really nice 5.5-inch Super AMOLED, not Super AMOLED, AMOLED display. That would be a Samsung technology, but this is standard AMOLED display. Really nice Snapdragon 820, 4 gig of RAM, all the high points. Nice camera. But what this thing has, and what I'm sure some folks that are watching right now have heard and seen a little bit of, is Moto mods. And actually, I gotta hand it to Motorola and Lenovo for this. This functionality is so well executed that I am thoroughly impressed. And it takes a lot these days to get us impressed with cell phones, with smartphones, because there's just so much product on the market that you gloss over after a while. You've seen one, you've seen them all almost, except for the real Halo stuff. This is pretty impressive. This is a Moto mod that I'm looking at right now. This is the projector mod. Let me see if I can flip it around here. Here we go. So you can see right there a little indentation there. That's a projector. And this sucker just, literally, I'm just going to put it together right now. Boom, magnetized all together. Sits in the back of the phone. The phone just woke up and said, oh, you attached your projector mod. And let me see if I can turn it on screen without blowing myself up. There we go. There, the projector's on right now. You can't see it because it's off camera, but I'm actually projecting the.
Project it on your shoulder.
Project it on my shoulder.
Point it towards your shoulder.
Okay, I'm gonna point it to my face. There you go.
Whoa! Hey,
there you go. I'm looking a little freaky there. So, all right, it's on the back wall now. This is the display of the phone on the back wall. There's a few notifications. The clock. I think it's upside down. Let me flip it around. There we go. Point it down. Okay. So I am projecting this phone on the wall behind me right now with that mod. I just clipped it on. It was dead, right? And then I put it in the back of the phone and bang. Now it's projecting.
How long does the battery last on the projector, or is it using the phone battery?
I haven't looked at that yet. It does use the phone battery if you want. It also has its own onboard battery.
Gotcha.
And so I'm still going through it. I got to look at the specs on that. I'm actually putting together the review. We will have it live later this week. I can't talk much more about the NDA on it or the deadline or all that good stuff. But yeah, this is Moto mods, or one of the Moto mods is also a JBL speaker mod that I have, and then a battery pack mod, an additional supplemental battery pack mod, and just impressive. The first time I fired this up and projected, I was just blown away. And yeah, I got to hand it to Motorola and Lenovo for this one. Really innovative stuff here and very well executed. So stay tuned to HotHardware.com. We will have the full review with Moto mods coming up in the next few days. And gentlemen, I've done enough talking. Anything else to add before we sign off?
Just the usual. There's a lot more on the site that we don't get to talk about in the podcast. So if you like what you've heard, also subscribe, but come by HotHardware.com. We have tons of news. Paul right there does multiple news posts every day, plus we have a whole news team, multiple reviews that we don't get to talk about just due to time constraints here. Lots more information at the site, also on Facebook, Twitter, Google+. We are everywhere, so come find us.
Subscribe, hit that like button and subscribe if you would here, and yeah, join us at hothardware.com, facebook.com/hothardware, twitter.com/hothardware, and youtube.com/hothardwarevids, and we're on Google+, of course, as well. And Paul, what's a wisdom from you before we let you go?
Yes, be careful out there catching those Pokemon.
Yeah, you got to watch where you're going, man. You can't go stumbling around. Stay inside and play on your PC, and we'll tell you more stuff about computers. All right, folks, thanks for stopping by, and thanks again to Tom Petersen from NVIDIA for joining us. Take care, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one.